Hey, Shavua Tov. A question we should ask ourselves is, am I for or against? Not about any particular issue, but in general, am I for or against? This will help us shed light on some troubling aspects of the Korach rebellion in the Parsha, and it will also help us better understand something that the rabbis say, which is Derech Eretz Kadmala Torah, that character takes precedence over Torah. Let's dig in. Korach, as we know, raises the rabble. He gathers people to complain. Moses and Aaron should not be exalted. Everybody is holy. It's what Rabbi Soloveitchik called a common sense rebellion. Now, normally in these kinds of situations where the people are sinning, Moses will rebuke them, but then beseech God to forgive them. But here he does not. The opposite is the case. He asks God to punish them. He calls a miracle upon them, that the earth should open its mouth and swallow them. Why so harsh? And when he is asking for this, he says something quite striking. He says, I didn't take any of their donkeys, nor did I do any harm to them. So first of all, we would think that Moses did harm to them. Second of all, it's irrelevant if Korach and his people are committing a grievous sin by doubting the word of the Lord in the choice of Moses and Aaron. So then what difference is it if Moses frowned at him once or took his parking spot? Why should that be a factor? We need to understand that a lot better as well. And a third question. The Talmud tells of a rabbi, Rabbi Bar Chana, who took a fantastic odyssey, I would call it, into the wilderness guided by a Tia, an Arab merchant, an Ishmaelite merchant, who took him to all of the spots in the desert, and one of them was to the place where Korach and his people were swallowed up. And the Arab merchant said to him, listen to what they say. And he hears voices from under the earth saying, Moses is true, his Torah is true, and we are liars. And the Arab merchant tells Rabbi Bar Chana that they say this every month. They get spit up a little bit out of Gehinom, out of purgatory, and they say this, and then they go back down. Well, if that's the case, how come they're still in purgatory? Because it sounds like they're repenting. And we know that even the wicked only are in Gehinom for 12 months, unless they've lost their portion in the world to come. So it seems to be that Korach and his people have repented. Maybe they repented on their way down. If that's the case, why are they still there? Now, there is an opinion of the Maggid of Dubna who says they did not repent, and that's why they're still there. Wait a second, didn't they just say Moses is true and his Torah is true and we're liars? That sounds like repentance to me. It sounds like confession. So the Maggid of Dubna answers this with a humorous parable. A man was betrothed to a woman in a faraway town, and it turns out that her father and her family was dysfunctional at best. The father was a cheat, a crook, a nasty, awful person. And the people in the town wanted to warn this groom about exactly what kind of family he's getting into, especially who the father-in-law is going to be. So they sent someone to the groom in the other town, and the person found the groom, and the groom said, where are you from? He says, I'm from such and such a town. The groom said, oh, I'm betrothed to so-and-so from that town. And he says, oh, what a wonderful family. Please tell me, the father is righteous, he davens every day, he learns the daf yomi of the Talmud, and he goes to the mikveh, and he gives lots of charity. Sterling character. Wow, the groom is happy. Wow, I'm getting into a great family. And by the way, what's your name? My name is Jacob the liar. So, so the Dubna Maggid says that this is exactly what's happening with Korach. They're saying Moses is true and his Torah is true, but we're liars, meaning we're lying about that. So that's a very interesting thing. Why are they still in Gehinnom if they actually did tshuva? And if they didn't do tshuva, what is this story coming to teach us? So I'll answer this by raising a question raised by Rabbi Ralph Pelkovitz, Zichrono Livracha, who was the rabbi in Long Island, very well known in Far Rockaway. Rabbi Pelkovitz asks a fascinating question. He says, the people saw Korach swallowed up by the earth. I would think that at that moment they would then say, wow, Moses is true, his Torah is true, and Moses and Aaron have exactly the right jobs and positions in the people. But no, They complain. They accuse Moses and Aaron of having killed Korach and all of his people. It was an open miracle. The earth swallowed them up. How could they accuse Moses and Aaron? How come they didn't immediately accept Moses and Aaron as their leaders? And not only that, a plague comes right afterwards because of what they're complaining. And Aaron stops the plague by bringing incense, but we don't find after the plague that they're saying, "Oh, now we get it. You Moses and you Aaron are indeed the right place." We don't find them doing anything of the sort. There has to be a third demonstration. What is the third demonstration? Each of the princes of the 12 tribes brings their staff to the sanctuary, and Aaron brings the staff on behalf of the tribe of Levi. And it's in the sanctuary overnight. In the morning, they see that Aaron's staff has bloomed and blossomed. It's giving fruits and it's giving flowers. And now they know, now says the Torah, their complaints against God will stop and they will accept the decision. So the question that Rabbi Pelkowitz asks is very powerful. How come the first two things, the earth opening up and swallowing Korach, and then a plague, didn't get them to change their opinion, didn't get them to accept Moses and Aaron? But the staff, which is much more mild, one would think, did. And he gives a very simple and very potent psychological answer. Because punishment does not change a person. Hope and aspiration do. Punishment does not change. Those first two things, the earth swallowing and the fire that came with it, and the plague, were punishment. Punishment can at best restrain a person, slow down a person, maybe prevent them from doing bad things, but it does not change their innate character. And this is important to keep in mind when dealing with countries like the Iranian regime, who are beyond the the word of evil. And no matter what punishment that may be inflicted upon them militarily, it's not going to change them. To think that it's going to turn them and turn that regime into a different regime, that all of a sudden they're going to become normal, not going to happen. It just, the human race is not built that way. So that's the first thing. But when you bring the staff and it blooms and blossoms, that is going to change them, because that is hope, that is aspirational. And I think that this is exactly the definition of the question of against or for. There are people whose whole life is against. They are angry at this one. They're opposed to that one. They're envious of that one. That one has too much. That one needs to be fought. That one needs to be destroyed. That one needs to be complained about. And they, as a matter of personality, are against. And I think there are two levels on against. One level of against is somebody who does it on their own. They choose to embrace bad character, envy, greed, and therefore they see everybody else as rivals, competitors, and even enemies. And therefore they are against. You want to ask them what their positive vision for life should be? They won't really have one. They may come up with one, because you can't just be against, but they don't really have one, and they are self-made against people. Korach was exactly this. This is why Moses is saying, did I steal somebody's donkey? Did I do any bad to them? Did I cause them harm? In other words, did I make them into against, or did they do it on their own? Because the second level, the better level, the level that there is hope for, is somebody who is opposed or against or negative because of a cause, because somebody else caused them. It could be social pressure. It could be they were brought up in such an environment. Or it could be that they were turned off to their religion, to Yiddishkeit, because of somebody who did not treat them well. And that is such an important and primary obligation upon everybody who is a teacher. And when I say everybody who's a teacher, I don't just mean people who work in a school. I mean anybody who wears a kippah, anybody who represents Torah Judaism is a teacher to everybody whom you meet. And every teacher needs to learn the character traits of Rab Aryeh Levin, of the Chafetz Chaim, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, of my Rebbe Rav David Lifshitz, people who are great, righteous people, but who knew and who cared deeply about each individual. In other words, everybody who comes into contact with a religious person should walk away and say, that person is a wonderful person. I want to know more about being religious like them. And that's what it means, derech eretz kadma Torah, that character precedes Torah, because you can't expect to bring people close to Torah if you don't have character. If you think that going out and making demonstrations and blocking traffic is going to make somebody come closer to Yiddishkeit, you better think again. So that is the important lesson of the second type, the people who became against because somebody somewhere made a mistake and pushed them into being against. Those people are the ones who suffered the plague, and the healing for that, by the way, is the incense, which symbolizes unity. And note that a plague is something which is passed from one to the other. It's infectious. And so that is evil speech. It goes from one person to another, and people cause each other to be negative. And the healing for that is incense, where people actually come together and unify. And that is a way to mitigate, but it doesn't yet change the person. It is still only on the level of punishment. What changes people? A positive vision. People who are for in their very nature. What do I want life to be? What do I want the world to be, my country to be, my community to be, my family to be? What brilliant and beautiful and inspiring vision do I hold? And so, therefore, we learn an important lesson. Those who are self made anti and against, like Korach, there is no dealing with them, there is no saving them, and they must be swallowed up because they can destroy everything. And that's exactly why Moses did what he did and called upon them the punishment that he did. And that's also why he justified. And he said, I didn't take their donkey, I didn't cause them to be evil. Lo hareoti could also mean I didn't cause them to be evil. I didn't scowl at them, and I didn't take their parking spot, and I didn't insult them. I was nothing less than a complete mensch to them. And therefore, if they still did this, it is because they made themselves evil. They identify as such, and there can be no deals made with them. But somebody who was caused to be evil by others can also be caused to be good by others, who will give them a positive vision, a hope, and an aspiration. And when we embrace being for people, we will fix ourselves, we will fix our nation, and we can fix the world. Shavuot.